Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. There's not a lot going on today, so I thought I'd start out with a little mini editorial about why we need a Captain Marvel movie. And of course, Captain Marvel is the current superhero name of Carol Danvers. But some of you might be more familiar with her from her Ms. Marvel days. But anyway, there's been a lot of rumors that she's next up for Marvel Studios to bring to the big screen. I've said I'd like to see Elizabeth Banks in the role. Some people say Emily Blunt, although it looks like Emily Blunt is now going over to DC. Of course, she infamously had to give up the Black Widow role because of her commitment to Gulliver's Travels, that Jack Black movie, but I think that it all worked out quite nicely with Scarlett Johansson, although I'm sure Emily Blunt wonders what could have been. Although she certainly proved herself in Edge of Tomorrow. But the reason I wanted to talk about Captain Marvel specifically today is because it just seems a perfect storm right now of these female characters that are, I think knocking at the glass ceiling of, Marvel female superhero-ness, but I think that I'd like to see them break through in a specific way that I think only Captain Marvel can do. And let me explain. For instance, what really truly inspired me today was the new trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy, the international trailer. I've reviewed it over on the original Beyond the Trailer channel. You can go check that out today and see what I had to say about that. But one of the things I briefly commented on was the fact that Gamora finally has a line. And a lot of people have been asking me why I haven't addressed that sooner, why I'm not more upset that Gamora doesn't have anything to say in these trailers to date, why she's just the strong, silent, deadly, and sexy type that we're so used to seeing. And I think that the reason that I haven't been upset about that is because that's just the way the Gamora character is being played here. And you can't really rally against the decisions that the movie has made, the franchise, Marvel Studios and James Gunn have made as a whole. That's Gamora. She's strong, silent, deadly, and sexy. That's just the route they've decided to go. And she's not the star of the movie. It's not her film. And that's the reason I brought up Emily Blunt in Edge of Tomorrow. I also saw some people said, well, Grace, you always want to see strong female characters. Why did you bring up Emily Blunt more in your Edge of Tomorrow review? And I would say because, well, Emily Blunt did a very nice job, and she certainly seemed very much like a capable soldier in that situation, the situations she was put in. Because of the way the film was written, she was always, restarted. She was, she never really could be at the same level of Tom Cruise, and she didn't really contribute a lot to the movie, besides kind of being like his sidekick, his extra, she could back him up, an extra gun, an extra, mech suit. And she really couldn't guide the story, or, she really never had any scenes where she saved the day. Everything she did, she was following Tom Cruise, and that worked for the movie. I don't think that you should ruin films and stories just for the sake of giving a female character a great role. Just go write another movie where where a female character has a great role. Not every movie has to be everything, as we've discussed before, as I've touched on. So Edge of Tomorrow, great the way it is. And I would argue Guardians of the Galaxy with its portrayal of Gamora is great the way it is. Then I thought to myself, well, but you know what? All these female characters are badass. Emily Blunt had a little bit of a softness to her, but still, again, really tough. And there's a sameness to these female superheroes, which I guess is what I'm getting at here. And I said this before, that Gamora is just an alien version of Black Widow. Emily Blunt is a futuristic soldier version of Black Widow and Gamora. And then I thought, well, what about Wonder Woman? She's getting her own movie in 2017, apparently. She's going to be the big female, gun, literally, on the Justice League DC Cinematic Universe that Warner Brothers is building. And I thought, well, you know what? She's probably going to be portrayed in the same way. Really tough, great, a really strong hide, a great warrior. Probably will give some sarcastic remarks about how the guys aren't as good as her. We can write this stuff in our sleep. But I don't really know if anyone is going to play Wonder Woman in a different way, because that's just the way she's been played for so long in the comics and the movies and the TV show. Wonder Woman, has a very distinct persona, and I think giving her a more of humanity, it just isn't going to work with that character, and so I don't expect her to be the one who breaks the mold. But Captain Marvel can. Captain Marvel is an Air Force pilot. She is a regular person. She's like Hal Jordan almost from Green Lantern. And now that didn't work out with Ryan Reynolds, but in the comic, it's a very successful character. Of course, I think Jon Stewart is a lot of people's favorite Green Lantern, but again, we shouldn't just throw Hal Jordan away. He has a lot of pros in the way he's developed. So I think the point is that Carol Danvers is a regular person, and that's what I think is the next evolution in female superheroes. The female Indiana Jones. You know, everybody says that Harrison Ford was such a great action hero because he wasn't afraid to make a stupid face. He wasn't afraid to look uncool. He wasn't afraid to show he was in legitimate danger and he didn't know how he was going to get out of it. Or those great scenes of, like, you know, when he shoots the guy with all the knives, and he's like, Harrison Ford doesn't play it like, oh, I'm so cool. He plays it like, duh, you know, like he's almost like bewildered this actually worked and that the other guy thought he could beat him in a, like, you know, it's like, yes, I brought a gun to a knife fight and I won. So I really think that Harrison Ford, to this day, people are still trying to repeat the magic that he brought to the big screen, and you know, that's it. I'm surprised that, you know, more actors aren't willing to sacrifice their egos for the sake of creating a character that's more identifiable. I think Chris Pratt has the potential to go there. That's why I'm very excited about him as an action star. You know, he has Jurassic World coming up, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy. But I think that whoever they cast, and I hope that they do a good job casting whoever will play Carol Danvers, because she needs to be an actress who's willing to do this. But that's, I think, you know, and also for this kind of character development, the character needs to be the lead. Because you need to really meet the character, go through their journey, their origin story, and so far you have not had any female lead characters in a superhero movie. And even Black Widow, you know, I think that they did really do a nice job developing her character a little bit in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but still, she is a secondary character. And maybe one day she will get a solo movie, but she's still going to be that, you know, badass, tough female character that's, you know, become a bit of a stereotype, which obviously is successful, but I want to see this other development. So we'll see. I think I have hope for Star Wars. The casting of Lupita Nyong'o and Gwendolyn Christie, I feel, could go in this direction, so that's why I'm very excited about it, and that's why I feel a lot of people aren't excited about it. I mean, that news wasn't that big, actually, when it broke. A certain group of people got excited, but it didn't really, you know, bring the house down in terms of internet chatter. So I'm curious to know how you guys feel, if you think this is a great opportunity for Captain Marvel, or you want Captain Marvel to be another tough-talking, badass, strong, sexy, silent female superhero type. All right, so that's the first story, well, editorial of the day. Let's move on to this Anna Kendrick story. Anna Kendrick, everybody loves Anna Kendrick these days. She's a big star in Pitch Perfect. They're making Pitch Perfect 2. She's in Into the Woods for Disney, Cinderella in their upcoming fairy tale musical. And then, of course, people are saying they want her to be Belle in the upcoming live-action Beauty and the Beast. She's their dream casting. And yesterday she did land a role, but it's of the animated variety, and it's for DreamWorks. And this, you know, as I said, slow news week. So this story really got some traction where I think it otherwise might not have. Also, this is in, you know, this is in the perspective of the How to Train Your Dragon kind of not soaring as high as everybody would have liked at the box office. So I guess DreamWorks is hungry for a positive headline, so they've lined this up, and you know, I think they maybe wanted to detract from the How to Train Your Dragon box office disappointment story. So what is it? What is Anna Kendrick going to do? She's going to voice the lead character and do the singing in the DreamWorks upcoming Trolls movie. Now, you might recall, I'm sure you've seen Trolls around in, you know, the periphery of, you know, pop culture references. They used to be really big a long time ago. You know, Trolls never got their popularity, but there was a time where these things were super, super popular, believe me. So DreamWorks feels they can bring the Trolls back, and I really have serious questions as to whether they can, and I feel that DreamWorks might be heading off of another cliff. I don't know, you know, maybe their development department needs to be rehashed as well as their advertising department. I mean, I like the movies they're turning out, but at this point, you just can't ignore the consistent underperforming and sometimes downright failure. So they're doing a Trolls movie, and Anna Kendrick will voice the lead. This has apparently gone through reams of development. The thing is hardly recognizable from its original incarnation. But currently, the Trolls movie, she's going to voice a character called, I have my notes here, Poppy. And she is a relentlessly upbeat princess who has to go on on a journey to save the trolls. You know, pretty stereotypical storyline there as well. And I think that they're saying, well, you know, don't you love Anna Kendrick? Don't you want to see her as an adorable troll? And I would be really curious to know if anybody would answer yes to that. So I'm glad Anna Kendrick is getting more work. She, of course, Up in the Air with opposite George Clooney was her big breakout movie under Jason Reitman. She was nominated for an Oscar, but then it looked for a while like she was going to disappear. But she's a great example of someone who stayed the course, realized there weren't a lot of roles that were, you know, made for her, and she went and she found those that either were, that were hiding, or she took roles and adjusted them to fit her really unique and I think positive persona. And she, to some degree, I was just talking about realistic female characters, and I think that's why Anna Kendrick's so popular. She's a realistic female character. Although there's a very funny photo for the set of Pitch Perfect 2 saying, how to do the dress code. And one is like, they say, this is good, and it's Anna Kendrick, as a regular person, and they were like, this is not good, and it's her made up for like one of those fashion magazines, and airbrushed considerably and trying to be very chic and sexy. And I think it was interesting that, Elizabeth Banks is directing that she recognized the importance of relatability, and that's always been an important aspect for both male and female actors, and it's something that people often forget in Hollywood because everybody wants to be hot. I've said this is a problem with Emma Stone. I think she's lost a lot of her relatability, and of course Anne Hathaway famously, or infamously in my opinion, threw it away because she really wanted to be considered sexy. But look at Julia Roberts. Well, I mean, she might not be successful now, but Julia Roberts was, and Doris Day, you might not know this, but Doris Day in her day was the most successful actress at the box office. Forget all the people you've heard about, like Marilyn Monroe and Ava Gardner, all the sexy names that, are iconic and people have posters of and still remember. Doris Day was the one who brought people into the theater, and I think Julia Roberts was her version of Doris Day. And right now, Sandra Bullock did it for a while, and she might still be there, and I thought Emma Stone might be able to take over that role, but again, she fell victim to wanting to be the attractive, hot girl in the movie, and there's no money there. All right, so let's move on to the third story of the day. Someone else who's very popular and who's really stuck it out is John Chu. Now, John Chu, of course, started out with the Step Up movies. He comes from the League of Extraordinary Dancers. He's a big dance guy, and then he was able to get the gig directing the Justin Bieber movie for Paramount, the one that did well. And Paramount was so pleased with the results, they said, you know what, we love you, John Chu. I guess he was really great to work with behind the scenes, and they said, why don't you take over G.I. Joe Retaliation? And Chu was like, I'd love to. Now, of course, infamously, the film had to be reworked to get more Channing Tatum in there, although he never really was in the film that much, even though they had to do reshoots. I liked G.I. Joe Retaliation, by the way. I actually ended up watching it on demand, and I was pleasantly surprised. Maybe it didn't play in theaters, but if you want to watch something now and you're bored on an afternoon, and it's summer, I know a lot of you are on vacation, order up G.I. Joe Retaliation. I think you'll have a good time. It has Dwayne Johnson in it, right? And it has some really cool special effects. And also Byung-Hun Lee as Storm Shadow, and he's going to be, I think, the new evil Terminator. So at least you'll be doing some research. But anyway, G.I. Joe Retaliation, pretty successful, and then he directed Justin Bieber's Believe, the follow-up film, which tanked. But I don't know if that's John Chu's fault. It's more Bieber just completely shooting himself in the foot and having everybody ask to be deported back to Canada. But John Chu apparently still a favorite in Hollywood, and he's landing some really choice gigs. Of course, he's going to do the Gem and the Holograms movie. Jason Blum has brought him on, but I think his dance background and Step Up, very popular films. They do very strongly at the box office. They keep making them, as you can see, even though Chu has left the franchise as a director. And so Gem and the Holograms, that seems like a reasonable fit to me. And he's doing apparently G.I. Joe 3. But this is the big news, and this is why I wanted to bring it up today. It looks like he's been tapped to do Now You See Me 2, the sequel to that great Jesse Eisenberg, Mark Ruffalo magic film with Woody Harrelson as well and Isla Fisher that was a surprise hit. Hugely successful. It made so much money at the box office, particularly worldwide, and it didn't cost that much to make. So Lionsgate is very excited about turning that into a franchise. So I think that John Chu, is he a good choice? I don't know. I mean, I think he hasn't really quite delivered yet. I think he doesn't mess things up, but he doesn't elevate material, and I don't think he's a selling point for a film. But then, of course, Louis Leterrier, who did the first Hulk with Edward Norton, not the first Hulk, but the first, I guess, official Hulk. A lot of people, people say it's official, but, Marvel is really downplaying that as much as they possibly can. But Louis Leterrier didn't get the way of that movie, so I guess John Chu could deliver here. I really liked Now You See Me. That's another great movie you should check out. I think Jesse Eisenberg and Mark Ruffalo were very well utilized, and I'm excited to see the sequel. I'm curious as to when the heck it's going to come out, because of course Jesse Eisenberg is so busy with American Ultra opposite Kristen Stewart. Uma Thurman's also in that film. They play like potheads that are wanted by the government, and I believe they have superpowers. I think that's very interesting. Big intense bidding war for that property, by the way, at the festival circuit, and a usually high price tag was paid for it, despite Adventureland, by the way, the first time Eisenberg and Stewart paired up, not doing that well at the box office. But then, of course, Jesse Eisenberg is extremely busy with Batman v Superman. So Now You See Me is kind of reliant, and of course, Mark Ruffalo is shooting the Avengers 2 Age of Ultron. But look who you have. You have Lex Luthor and the Hulk. Of course you're going to make a film which reteams them together. So I'm excited about it, but I'm curious. I really would like to know. I wonder why Jon Chu is so popular in Hollywood and why they continue to feel they should give him these gigs. I'm curious to what you guys think. Is Jon Chu maybe a selling point for you? All right, speaking of box office and how Now You See Me was a big hit overseas, let's go to today's viewer question, which is from Rafa Blastoise. And Rafa says, "Hi Grace, question. Why do most of the people only seem to care about the domestic box office if the foreign box office makes more money?" Well, the reason, Rafa, is because the foreign box office makes more money as a whole. And by the way, the foreign box office is becoming much more important and much more reported as it continues to be the silver lining for many films. They have disappointing domestic box office numbers to report, but they can always point to their overseas numbers and say, oh, but don't worry, the film's doing great overseas. Case in point, X-Men Days of Future Past. So far, one of the lowest performers in the franchise domestically, but now the biggest of the franchise worldwide thanks to that foreign box office. But it's hard to really get into the foreign numbers because they are, when you divide them by country, they're actually so small. Countries actually individually contribute very little to a movie. They're only powerful in as a group. So that's, I think, one of the first reasons that foreign box office numbers have never been quite as sexy, because they're just too small. A movie opens huge in the UK, but I believe something like 20 or 30 million is considered a huge opening for the UK, but it's quite disappointing here in the United States. So I think that's one reason. Just, the numbers aren't as attractive. You don't want to post those numbers. Oh, you don't want to say, oh, my movie did great, it made 30 million overseas. And, considering that everyone here is basing it off of domestic performance, they're like, that's great, really? Now, the other thing, though, is, Rafa, you should take heart in the fact that China and Japan and South Korea, the Asian region overall, but China specifically, I think, is leading the charge here, is beginning to become reported because the numbers are so big. And so when countries start to get numbers that are on par with the United States' box office numbers, as China is doing, then you see they begin to make their own headlines. So it's really a numbers game, getting their numbers up to that level. Russia is also doing quite strongly. I think Mexico can sometimes produce some big numbers. But again, right now, the U.S. is dominated for so long just out of sheer size of the movie-going population here that we've dominated the conversation in the box office. But China is making serious inroads in their box office performance, and that's why they're getting headlines. And as I said, I've reported much more of the foreign box office and Movie Math because those numbers are becoming so important and they make up so much of a movie's box office final tally at this point. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, why people are not going to the movies quite as much. I feel, it's the economy. I've discussed this before. It's the rise in poor theater behavior of other patrons, and also the movie theaters aren't very well kept, they're held up, and it's not a great experience as much as it used to be. And the quality of television is so strong. But that's a whole other conversation. But Rafa, that's the answer. It's just it's the size of the numbers and the sexiness. But I think we're very slowly seeing a change. Your question is a great one, and that's why I brought it up, because I think we are at a turning point. And you're in the middle of it, Rafa. Be patient. I think you will very soon see a day, just like you're seeing movies open overseas before they open here, where movies really are truly a global business. They are a global business right now, but I think primarily a global business is where we're heading. So thank you everybody so much for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's editorial, the 2 news stories, and the viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.